Kaivalya
I'm sorry, I was muted. Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam or KYG. Thank you for taking time to attend this class. As always, it gives us great privilege and pleasure at KYG to be able to host such sessions that take us towards at least one step closer towards enlightenment. We will continue in our study of this amazing concept of space, the final and the most subtle of all the five elements. But as always, like we do in Kaivalya Marga class, we enter these portals of learning with reverence and open-mindedness to help us absorb the topic, the context in which it is presented, the content, and then we take it up for contemplation and assimilation later. So let us begin, therefore, mindfully with 3 ohms. Allow these ohms to help your mind stay completely focused and mindful in the next 50 minutes or so. So in the last couple of classes, we touched upon the broad aspects of sound, of space rather. And in the last class, we talked about the idea of dance and space, dance, movement and space, and we explored the understanding behind and the connection behind how space and dance is linked to the idea of creation itself. In today's class, we get into a little more subtle topic, and I'm hoping and praying I'll be able to deliver the content the way I like it, to my satisfaction, because it is, in one sense, kind of complicated, but at the same time, it is very essential. It's not drab theory in one sense. It is very essential because if we really need to understand our own secrets and the impact of our or the influence of our inputs in the reality that is around us, if we need to get convinced that we are truly the architects of our reality around us, we are not victims of circumstances, but we are the masters of circumstances, then we need to understand these elements at various levels. And being the subtlest of them all, space being the container for creation itself, gives us that door, that window where we say, aha, this is where it all begins. So please allow me to present my thoughts, and I don't by any means claim any expertise or scholarship in these things, but I will share it with you the way it has made sense to me, and all of this are borrowed from Vedantic texts and another scripture called the Siddha Siddhanta written by Gorakshanath from the Natha tradition, which is very less known text, and someday we will take that up for study, but right now we will borrow some of that teachings for this class. So let us go without further delay into this idea of what is the source of sound. Where does sound originate from? Just like a movement or rhythm or dance, dance cannot exist without sound. Sound cannot, because it cannot exist without rhythm. Rhythm is sound. Sound is the very key for anything in creation, if you will. And therefore, by exploring the source of sound, we get an idea of how even creation began. So, let us take it very simply. In Akasha, in space is all around us, within us, outside us, okay? But for now, if you want to feel it's up there, that's fine too, but just imagine it's out here as well, and inside too. So in space, there is a vibration, a spanda, as it is called. This vibration is not felt at this point by us. It is just there. It exists. And we'll come to that, what source that is, what state of sound that is. But right now, just understand it exists, but I don't have an awareness it exists at this point. So there is a vibration. And that vibration in space, we need space to have that vibration. Just like we need space to make dance or movement, we need space to have any kind of vibration. Without space, it won't exist. And without that, nothing in creation comes forth. So space is the container, right? So it contains the subtlest of all elements, which is sound and vibration. So spanda or vibration occurs in space. Then what happens is that vibration, and I'll explain this a little more, we'll go back to it again, okay, just bear with me here. And that vibration is now comes into the level of awareness, and it is nurtured by wind. It could also be destroyed by wind. It is at that level where it make or break situation. Okay, so it is nurtured by wind. At this stage, I could give you an example of, let's say, a seed that is in the tree. The second stage is where the seed is in the ground, inside the ground. So you're kind of aware, but you can't see it. There is no sensory experience of the seed being there. You can't really prove it to your 2-year-old to say, where's the seed? It's inside the ground, right? So it is hidden from all senses. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it. It's down there. But you are aware that it is there, right? It is that kind of awareness that is existing at this stage, where Vayu begins to protect that. When that awareness comes, then it is Vayu or wind or breath that begins to nurture or destroy that sound. That's why breath is so vitally important in yogic practices and meditation and all. At that level is where breath attacks sound, and we'll come to that. So breath nurtures that seed, just like it's like a womb, it's like a vessel that protects the seed. It's like the womb in which the seed is now going to blossom, right? Find its nutrition. So it nurtures. What is it nurturing now? The breath of Vayu or wind. Wind is nurturing the vibration. In other words, because of that nurturing, it brings it into awareness. Otherwise, it will destroy it. Okay? So it comes into a state, I would call it awareness. So let's hold on to that thought. Then comes Agni. Now these are all the 5 elements. Look at how creation itself manifests. So then comes Agni, the element of fire. Then this element of fire, in other words, that one which gives light and a greater sense of perception. In other words, light, the Agni element is connected to the eyes, right? And eyes can see when there is light, heat, rays from the sun, right? So Agni gives us the sense of perception. In this, you cannot really see, quote unquote, see the sound, but then you can feel the sound. In other words, you can perceive it. Aha, I know what that sound is. There is a feeling that is generated because of that sound vibration. a feeling is generated, right? A sense of perception comes, a sense of clarity comes. One could call it visualization, but I mindfully refrain from that word. I'm going to use the word perception. You begin to perceive that sound. You begin to recognize that sound. So at some form, in the form of feeling is the form that is given to the sound at this point. Because it's all sound, right? You can't see it. Then what happens? Once a feeling comes, then you begin to experience that feeling. That experience is the element of water. Water is linked to taste, right? To the tongue. A dead man's tongue is dry. There's no water. You're alive, there is water. Water is the source of life. So water is taste. Taste means experiencing. We discussed this in the water element as well. If I describe mango as much as I can, it will not give you the experience equivalent to actually biting into a mango. Once you taste what a mango is, once you know or quote unquote experience what a mango tastes like, you say, I know it. Right? So in this case, with sound, what happens? When that feeling crystallizes and with Agni, then the water element condenses that feeling into a thought. In other words, it is now coating it with an experience, maybe from the past, maybe it's imagination, but it's giving it a thought. Right? Now I hear a sound in the dark and all of this comes in, and finally I begin to perceive that sound, and then immediately the thought comes in and says, aha, it must be a rat in the darkness, or it must be a mouse. So how is that thought coming? The thought is coming from a feeling that comes, right? All of this happens in a fraction of a second. We have just slowed it down to understand. And then when that thought comes, then Prithvi, or the element of earth, comes. Earth means manifestation. Earth means existence. So that thought finds its existence into the world of senses where others can hear what you're saying. And the word comes. Then that's when the word is formed. This importance of this word cannot be underestimated. Across all religions, they pay emphasis on the word. In Hinduism, in Sanathana Dharma, we talk about Om being the primordial sound, primordial vibration, the Om. The silence between the Oms being that vibration and even beyond. So from there, we slowly, the existence of all of these elements, states of awareness, consciousness, everything descends with the Om. So Om becomes a symbol of creation, of sound. In the Bible, they say that first there was the Word, and the Word was God. So Word, again, is given primary importance. Because if you look around you, all objects, right? I have a phone on my desk here, I have a mouse pad and a mouse and a laptop and all of this in front of me. All of this manifested in somebody's unconscious space as vibrations, and that vibration was nurtured by that person's breath. He was able to hold that, visualize that. It came down to an idea, a thought was formed, a logical pattern of thinking erupted. Then he brought it out into words, either wrote it down or spoke about it, and then he or she began to manifest that spoken word or written word. At this point, we'll just say word. Manifest that word into an object. So every object finds its existence to the word, and the word finds its existence to awareness and perception and feeling and thought. Right? It goes back there. That is how one understands the origin of sound. So now let us look at particular terms that Sanatana Dharma, the yogic texts, especially the Vedanta, uses when we understand source of sound. So the first thing is Akasha. We talked about Akasha. We talked about vibration. This is at a very subtle level. There is no awareness here at this point. It is pure vibration. And this is called, at this point, let us hold on to this term because this is not a very popular term. You may not have come across it. It's hidden in one of the scriptures, and I'm going to talk about it a little later. But at this point, hold on to this thought for some of you who may know these terms already. So at that level, it is simply lying in latent form. The energy is latent, and therefore the term that is used here is Matrika. Matrika. Matrika also means that which is motherly. So in Devi worship, you have the 9 Matrikas, you have the 8 Matrikas, you have all of those, the 9 goddesses, and also. So the idea here, what does that mean here in terms of sound? It is that which is actually possessing the latent energy, the one that is creating that sound. There is an energy in every sound. We'll understand this more when we talk about mantras, and we'll come to that. That latent energy is what is first expressed and is last expressed as well. I'll also prove to you how this is not a linear thing, but it's a circle that goes on. So that is latent energy. Understand this as latent energy inside that sound. That will be there till the very end. It may not even be realized. The sound might come and go. The latent energy might never be expressed or never find itself, never find fulfillment. That is why we have words that are spoken mindlessly, doesn't have any energy, because this latent energy doesn't manifest. There is awareness. It's like you sitting on a big bench, if you will, and under the bench there is a secret trunk, and inside the trunk there is all diamonds and gold, but you're not aware of it. You're just sitting there and perhaps with a begging bowl in your hand and asking for money, when you're actually right under your feet there is treasure, right? So treasure being there has to be discovered, otherwise it could just be there, and that is the energy of Matrika. Matra also means beat, rhythm. In dance, in singing, in Indian language. So Matra has a very powerful word. Matru means mother. Matra is beat or tal. Matra is also that which gives life to the alphabet or letter. And then from there comes Matra, comes not only Matru, which is mother, but Matra also mantra, gives birth to the word mantra. The mantra, the energy of the mantra, the secret of the mantra, and all of that can be understood if we understand this one component in the source of sound, Matrika. So let's hold on to that thought at this point. It's a latent energy inside that sound, which is going to be latent. At any point it could be released, but it is latent. And that's why mantra and all of that practice comes to release that latent energy. That is why it says Devi has to be awakened. The Shakti has to be awakened in the mantra. Otherwise the mantra is practically a waste. So I'm going to also be kind of focused more on the mantra side of it, because every word actually is a mantra, is a sound that emanates from us. So I'm trying to be very, very, very mindful of words that come out. And if something slips out, I begin to introspect and say, wow, where did that come from, right? And so the idea being that you pay attention to these sounds because of the latent energy inside these sounds, which owes its connection to the cosmic Shakti in the universe. Alright, so in Akasha vibration, when we are talking of this element or this component in sound called Matrika. From there, that sound, that latent energy finds its way into the breath. In breath I told you is like a womb in which that particular energy, Matrika, is nurtured. So now you come to a state called Para. Para. Okay? Para means it's an unknown, it's not known yet. It's an unstruck sound. Anahata, if you will, the heart chakra is a place for that. The unstruck sound means you know it is there, but you can't see it, you can't smell it, there is no senses that can relate to that. So it's not a sensual experience, it's merely an awareness, a knowing. Para. That is para. Unstruck sound. So in Vedanta they call it the para. Then comes Agni. the fire that brings perception, light comes in. What is that sound? A feeling arises, right? That is pashyanti in Vedanta. That's why it's called pashyanti. Pashyanti means that which can be seen. Pashyanti is seen, but not seen in terms of an object that can be seen physical. It's not a physical object, a sound, and therefore you can perceive that sound. You recognize that sound. You know that sound. Because we have a database inside, right? So we begin to recognize that sound. So pashyanti, a meaning is attached to that sound, and because of that meaning, the feeling is almost simultaneous. It's not one after the other, though. It comes, right? And the moment we begin to recognize the sound, then we have already either experienced it from the past, so we draw from the past, or we form a thought in imagination, and a thought is formed. This is madhyama. Madhyama is like the dream state. It's neither here nor there. It's coming. It's like, sometimes I catch myself many times I'm speaking and I say, what is the word for that? What was the word for that? I mean, I have it in my thought, but it's not forming itself into a word, because either there is a discrepancy in my language because I'm thinking in one language, perhaps speaking in another language, I don't know. So because of whatever the reason could be, it might take time for that word to actually come out of my mouth from the thought. So there is a stage that I recognize the sound, there is awareness, pashyanti, then there is a madhyama, a stage where the thought forms, and then that thought becomes manifest into a word. The thought is merely manifesting into a word. The words later on, when it goes out and comes back in, that is what creates further realities. So we are already talking of the source of all of this. That is Prithvi. When the earth, in other words, earth comes, existence, creation, like we actually see, right? We say, let us be real, come down to earth, all right? So that existence is word. That word is called Vaikhari. Vaikhari in Vedanta. Vaikhari. Vaikhari is expressed word. The proper word, the language that you chose, the word that you chose to express that particular thought. Like I am speaking to you now, every word that is coming out is Vaikhari. So this is how this sound forms its pathway and comes. At every stage it is true. Where does the expression come from? Where does the word come from? Vaikhari comes from Madhyama. It comes from a thought, right? I have to think before I speak, and therefore if I am speaking something, the source of my word is my thought. Yes. What is the source of your thought? The source of your thought is my ability to perceive helps me to create thoughts. That's why little children don't think too much. They're looking around, they're smiling 1 second, crying 1 second. They don't think like you and I do. Because we differ in our ability to perceive, differ from a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old has a different ways of perceiving things. A 5-year-old has a different way of perceiving things, a 10-year-old, a 50-year-old, and so on, right? Because of perception. So where do thoughts come from? Thoughts come from feelings, and that feelings is a matter of perception. That comes from a deeper level of awareness. Vayu. The breath is that bridge there that helps you to become aware. So how do we make sense of this? The importance of breath here is so vital, because like I said in the previous slide, it can nurture that vibration or destroy that vibration, because that vibration is in the seed form at that point. And it is an awareness, but you got to nurture that awareness. And only breath can do that. So us simply becoming mindful of the breath itself creates that awareness. We cannot put words into what lies in that level. So why am I saying this? When we talk about in practical terms, when we say examine your core beliefs, I always say this, right? It's one of my favorite approaches. Examine your core beliefs, because those core beliefs that are driving you from deep inside is what is really creating the reality. So one would say, and I often get the question, that how do I know what my core beliefs are? What is that core belief? Is that at that level of unstruck sound, those seeds are there. Those are the seeds that form into words, words form into actions, and therefore they are the seeds of karma that are waiting to blossom, waiting to be either ignored, and so they will just dry and not even find fruition, or they will find fruition. It all depends on our level of awareness of what is inside there. How do we get there? Breath. And that's why Vayu is that inside the womb of Vayu, inside the vessel of breath, lies the secret knowledge of going deep within. Let us for now call it unconscious, but I would rather call it the chitta. Deeper into the chitta. Deeper into the chitta. In order to go and find out exactly what is there, we need the breath. And breath only makes us aware. And in that deep sense of awareness, we automatically cleanse things that would harm us. And that is why now you understand, if you ever have read the importance of subconscious mind, the importance of suggestions that's given to us. It's an awareness. That level of awareness needs symbols, needs sounds, needs images. You can't logically speak there. But more than all of this, these are only helpful, small things. More than all this, meditation and breath. Pranayama is that secret weapon, or the secret tool, if you will. Let's not talk of weapons these days. Secret tool that will help us dig into that para, unstruck sound. Otherwise, it's not possible to reach that sound at all. All we will get is a deep level of awareness. So then there is a latent energy, of course. If we nurture that, we will even be able to help get that latent energy out. So this is another way to look at the source of sound. Now I have put certain terms for us to learn, because this is how Vedanta talks about it. Vedanta doesn't talk about Matrika, and I'll come to that in a bit. But Vedanta talks about the 4 levels of sounds, 4 types of sounds. You will see this all over the internet, the 4 ones. The 5th one is not known much. So if you want to read about it, it's all over the place. Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari. So these are the 4 levels of sounds. But there is that 5th one, which we will explore because we are talking from the mantra point of view. How the spiritual practitioners viewed sound. It was not just a philosophical doctrine on sound, where all these 4 exist. What are the 4? Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari. That is exactly what we are doing now, sounds. But when we begin to understand Matrika, then there's a shift, there's a paradigm shift in understanding the nature of sounds. So now, if we are thinking that Akasha is somewhere up here, because we talked about elements, right, in our previous classes. When we say earth, we are talking of the Mooladhara. When we say the water or Jala, we are talking of the Swadhisthana chakra, the 2nd chakra above the Mooladhara. When we talk of Agni, of perception of fire, we are talking of the Manipuraka chakra in the region of the abdomen. Then when we talk of the 4th Vayu, we are talking of Anahata chakra, the heart chakra. When we talk of Akasha or space, we are talking of the Vishuddhi chakra. Here, the throat, because there is sound that comes out of the throat. So space. Makes sense, right? It's not so easy. This is where it gets a little complicated. That's why even if it's a little shorter class, I don't know how it will be, but just bear with me and try to understand this. Because so far it's pretty straightforward. That, okay, so I got it. Vaikhari is Prithvi. Prithvi is Mooladhara, so deep from inside. So it could, the Akasha is my inner space where there is vibration, and then it goes all the way down and it finds its expression. In other words, what I express as words forms my reality, and that is earth. Explains well, right? It's well understood? Okay. Now we're going to take this to the next step. What if I turn this the other way around? And why would I do that? So this is where it gets a little complicated. Akasha is now not the latent energy where there is that subtle vibration. Akasha is the word, where the manifested word happens. Where there is Vaikhari in Akasha, not in Prithvi now. Why is that? Am I just being intellectual and just playing with it? No. Because the reality that you and I experience is something like this. It is both the previous slide that I showed you, where Akasha has Matrika, the latent energy, and then Vayu has Para, and then Agni has Pashyanti, water has Madhyama, and Prithvi has Vaikhari. In other words, from subtle to the gross, it all finds its expression. We saw that. It made perfect sense. Why would I have to switch this? Guess what is happening at this point between you and me? Think of that for a few seconds. From my Akasha, a latent energy happens, and then it forms into a breath, and the breath gives birth to the Agni, and Agni begins to visualize it, understand it. Then I begin to form it into thoughts form into words, and I'm finding expression. So for me, from my point of view, I will say from my Akasha it all originates, just like we explained earlier. It finds its expression in finally the actual word Vaikhari, a gross expression comes out. Where does this come out? So the seed has now come fully. I knew there was an oak seed inside, nurtured it, watered it, and then it found its way, and now I have an oak sapling or a fully grown oak tree, right? Now I have this word that's out here. Then why do I need to change it? Because of you. What does that mean? What is happening to you who is receiving the sound? My expressed word enters where? Does it go straight to your Mooladhara? No. It enters through your ears. It enters your inner space. What enters your inner space? My word that originated at a very subtle from my inner space, that originated from my Prithvi, is now entering your inner space, your Akasha. So your Akasha is now receiving my expressed word. And then you're going to take that expressed word, breath, it turns into a thought. Now you're taking the breath and begin to nurture that into a thought. This is where I say listen to this with an open mind and then contemplate later. When you contemplate later, you are actually using your breath to nurture those words that are now forming thoughts in your head. Okay? So your breath is the Madhyama now. And then they generate feelings either of calmness or anger, depending on what I'm telling you. Whatever that feeling, it doesn't have to be extreme, but I'm just giving those extreme ideas to give you an idea. So you begin to perceive, aha, now I see it. I see a light there. And you begin to visualize or perceive or understand or comprehend it at your level based on what kind of thoughts you have allowed to find an expression based on how you've taken these words in. And so Pashyanti, a meaning comes to the words finally, correct? Right now you're only hearing sounds from my voice. That sound is getting processed. And then it is going into perception, meaning. And then you begin to go into that unstruck sound. Now you begin to taste the energy of that sound. We experience, and let me finish then, I'll tell you how we experience this, right? We begin to experience the unstruck sound. There is again a level of awareness at a sensual level, at the senses. The previous one we said was it not, right? But this is that unstruck sound, but it is giving an experience. And then it goes and settles deep inside the earth as pure latent energy, waiting to manifest at any time. Sound works both ways. It's never one way. It's easy to imagine. I wish it was simpler to imagine that it was one way. When you go and listen to a kirtan or a bhajan, you're closing your eyes. Somebody is getting an inspiration from their akasha, and from that latent energy, they are coming out and expressing a song, expressing a rhythm, expressing a chant, right? And now that sound is out there, and you are now receiving that sound. And that sound finds its way down. So when we come to that para stage, the second last one, as you can see on the slide, I said it's unstruck sound. So at that point, you experience something which is inexplicable. Let's call it a high moment, a bliss, a moment of bliss, and experience something you can't put it into words. That's why we struggle to explain our spiritual experiences to people, right? We just can't. There are these emotional highs, and sometimes even beyond emotions. It's much more than just feeling good, right? That a different kind of awareness opens up. That is that experience here at the para stage. And then that experience settles down, goes back into a latent form, waiting to explode into the Prithvi, in other words, in existence. That is why mantras have that power to actually create physical existence, change the reality, miracles of healing. All of that happens at that physical level. All kinds of miracles can happen at the physical level. Laws of physics and science can be broken if the sound energy is released. The latent energy in sound is released at that level of Matrika. But for that to go there and settle down with that energy intact, we need to have that vibration find its way, that word find its way into vibrational patterns and settle deep into, let us call this at that point Prithvi, or the deep unconscious. Deep inside the earth, it goes and settles. So if we find illness, if we find chaos, and if we find all of this in the world and in our lives, in our consciousness, we are attracting all this, we need to understand that deep in our own unconscious, subconscious mind, individually and collectively, we are harboring certain vibrational patterns that have energies that are being released without our control. And they manifest in circumstances, situations, experiences that are not to our liking. And at the same time, the other way around. Circumstances to our liking, wonderful things that happen to us, right? All of that happens when these kind of latent energies are released from deep within our Prithvi. So in Prithvi, the beauty of this path here is when you listen. You're listening to sounds, it's going deep inside. This is how education was done thousands of years ago through Vedas. The Vedic schools did not have slide point presentations like this. There was nothing to see. You had to listen. Writing in palm leaves and all of that came much, much later, maybe 4,000-5,000 years ago. But far before that, there was no such thing. Right? It was only listening, and therefore Vedas were called Shrutis. That kind of Vedas means all knowledge, because Vedas had geography, science, history, just like you go to a school. It was a complete, full array of learning that happened at all levels. But spirituality was very much a key component of that learning, which we are missing today. Right? And so all of that learning was done only by listening first. Shravana. It is the first path towards enlightenment. In the 9 paths of devotion, also, the first one, being the most important one, is Shravana. Shravanam. Then comes Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and so on, all that will come. But the first one is Shravanam. Shravanam means listen. Because what happens is, when you listen, that sound has, with all its latent energies, you're allowing it to enter inside. Then your breath is the one that nurtures it, Madhyama. And then all of that comes. And finally, that experience that you are, the awareness that comes because of these words. It could be a brilliant anecdote, an analogy. You'll get the aha moment while reading a book or while listening to something like this. You might say, aha, I see it now. That aha moment is that experience that's going to nurture that sound and then plant that memory of that experience or that experience itself along with the sound deep into your Prithvi. And that good experience, memory of that good experience, at this point it will be memory because once it goes deep inside, until the latent energy manifests in that sound, it remains as memory. But that memory itself will begin to release the latent energy from that Prithvi element. And so we benefit by sound when we listen to it. And I'm not talking of mindless listening. I know we say, because I'm relating all of this to practicality as well, right? That's always been my approach. It's not just a philosophical understanding, a theoretical understanding, but so we always say that, oh yeah, I listen to good sounds, good music when I'm driving, when I'm working. My TV is on the whole day. We have the Om Namah Shivaya chant going on the whole day. We have a small little chant that goes on the whole day. And we expect that those sounds to somehow create magic. They lose that latent energy and all is gone here because it doesn't even go to the point where you are creating an aha moment, because those are just sounds coming and going. Your breath is not nurturing them, you're not holding them, nothing is happening. It gets mixed with all the other sounds. If you're driving and listening, you're also paying attention to honking of other cars, existence of other cars, other thoughts might come, telephone calls might come. I've been in cars when there will be music going on and people talk on top of that. So it is all over the place. That kind of sound creates chaos. So what registers deep inside our Prithvi is chaos, 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 chaos. We begin to think that's okay and that's normal. That's why we say it's okay to fall sick, it's okay to be old, it's okay to die, it's okay to be like this. We become complacent, if you will, because we got used to an otherwise chaotic life. But when we become mindful of the energy of sounds and mindfully pay attention to certain sounds, in other words, mantras, namasmaranas and all of that, and we'll explore some of that in the course of this Akasha, because that's the key. Because when we do that mindfully, then that energy goes right through. And the latent energy within them has, that mantra, the sound, when it settles down, begins to release that latent energy. When we say, we chant a mantra and something good happened to us, or it is because we are able to release the energy in that mantra. While we are talking of mantras, please be aware and please take it from me. I'm telling you with great level of confidence here, that mantras cannot harm you. This latent energy that I'm talking of in a mantra can only be, in the worst case scenario, can only be ineffective or not effective at all. It just stays latent. You're sitting on that trunk, on the garden, like I said, on a bench, and below the bench there is this huge trunk full of gold and silver and diamonds and jewelry. When you're not aware of it, then it simply stays latent, dormant. It is not going to turn around and say, how dare you misuse me, how dare you not understand who I am, and the jewelry doesn't become a diamond sword and hurt you. So this false idea, and I say false because it is a very powerful idea today, because I get so many messages and emails saying, I was chanting this, something went wrong, oh, I'm very scared to chant this again, I don't want to do this again. As if the mantra had that power to harm you. Mantras don't harm, they're just ineffective. It is our fear that somehow we link certain situations and say, oh, it is because of this happened. Mantras are either effective or ineffective. They cannot be harmful. If they were, then any Westerner chanting Rudram, not pronouncing it properly, would be harmed by now. No, nobody gets harmed by that. But then they have to really, Westerner has to focus more, and even for us from India and other places, because of our peculiar languages, which have, though we have originated from certain of these sounds and mantras that originated in Sanskrit, we have modified it so much that we don't go back to that particular sound. So we have our own problems. But so does the Westerner who's trying to say the sounds. But in all of that, none of us get harmed by those sounds. What happens is they become ineffective, and therefore we could be saying that for many months, many weeks, many days, many decades, and nothing really is going to happen materialistically. That is what we see around. We see people chanting mantras and doing this and that. But then because of the mindlessness that accompanies the chant, that whole idea of education, the whole idea of chanting and speaking mindfully, where every word becomes a mantra, all of that is lost, then the Matrika remains dormant. She is just latent. She is fast asleep. The Kundalini is fast asleep. She never hurts to harm you. She never rises to harm you, because you're not even being able to even go there to awaken her. When I say her, I mean the Shakti. The Shakti in that sound is not awakened. And so, be aware of this. And therefore practice it with mindfulness. That mindfulness is what brings meaning. That meaning is what raises the right emotion, the right bhava. That right bhava takes you to the right experience. And that experience begins to settle deep inside and slowly begins to awaken the latent energy in that nama, in that mantra, in that chant that you're doing. So please keep that in mind as we understand it. But more importantly, understand this principle that the sound originates from a very tiny seed, let us say, which is in Akasha, a vibration from one source. It comes and manifests into sound, and then the one who receives the sound enters into his Akasha and finally settles as a seed. So this seed to seed is the circle of life. That's what you see around. That's why I use tree as an analogy. The same seed blossoms into a huge tree, and from the huge tree goes back into that seed again. And that seed once again goes into another tree. That is a circle of sound. So it is like the chicken or egg. Where did the sound begin? We don't know. At this point, we really don't have to care about it. But know that sound is now in a circular motion. It is coming from me, expressing itself, going into you. From you, it will come out and go into me. And we are constantly exchanging this. Whether I exchange it with the television, allow the television sounds to go within me, or it's my friends who speak to me, or the languages I speak, the messages I read, all of that are sounds that are either coming to me through my ears, or sounds going out of me through the mouth. Both the ear and the mouth are connected to space. The organ of action is the mouth, it speaks. The organ of perception is the ear, it listens. And they're connected via space, throat. And so that inner space that is within us, in our body, that you and I can relate to as a microcosm, is a microscopic reality of the macrocosm. That everything that finally finds its manifestation owes its origin to sound vibrations. There is really no other nice way to put it. It's an absolute fact. If we understand the secret of this, it is very difficult to be perfect. But even attempting to get closer and becoming more mindful, that's all we need to do. Become more mindful of the sounds. Become more mindful. Then you begin to perceive hidden energies in these sounds. And you will be able to allow these energies to awaken. So, for those of you who follow me in the Devi Khadgamala satsangs as well, that is all ultimately a bunch of sounds that we are going to generate, understanding the meaning. So when we generate those kind of sounds, how does the latent energy in the sound is not going to suddenly manifest because you're chanting it every day? When we do it mindfully, then that energy comes alive. When I say alive, in Prithvi, you will see that energy manifesting to you, speaking to you. Then spirituality is not a matter of belief or faith, it becomes experience. Then yoga becomes an experience. It's no longer philosophy. You will need less and less of books, and then you will have to simply tune into the energy patterns of sounds to allow meaning, vibrations, and knowledge to pour to you. It's not out of anyone's reach. It's absolutely possible if we pay attention to this most subtle element in the universe, space, and the vibrations that happen in space, in our internal space to begin with. The cosmos will work itself out automatically. So, finally, like I said, I want to put this out here. From Vedanta point of view, there were these, Vedanta has taught us, Vedanta means the summary of all the Vedic texts, and generally most popularly known are these four kinds of sound. The unstruck sound, para, pashyanti, which is meaning. That means you are able to perceive something, understand something, awareness. Then madhyama comes the intermediate level, and then vaikari, where it finally forms its expression. This is for normal conversations, this makes sense. However, when we study a particular text called the Siddha Siddhanta tradition, it's a tradition. Sorry, part of that word is getting a little hidden behind my frame there, but the word is tradition there. Siddha Siddhanta. Siddha Siddhanta. Paddhati, that is, Paddhati is a word for tradition. This is practiced by a very few schools of thought nowadays. This was a Natha tradition, and these teachings were brought to us by a great yogi called Gorakshanatha. Gorakshanatha. So like I said, it's again a very fascinating text. He also has this cosmology and everything and all the five elements and all of that. It's even more complicated than the Sankhya approach that we did in the very beginning of Kaivalya Marga class. But nevertheless, they talk a lot about, because they are tantrics, they are practitioners, right? They want to bring it back into experience, create reality with these energies, create reality in the Prithvi, in the element here. And therefore they know what they're talking about. So when they talk about the four sources of sound, they're saying it's not four but five. So you have para, you have pashyanti, you have madhyama, which is the same Vedanta. You have vaikhari, expression. But then what they are saying here, especially in terms to mantra here now, is the latent energy, Matrika. Matrika is the other one, that is the latent energy of sound. So how do we understand it in mantra? Because it is sound, pronunciation of phonetics is of prime importance. Sanskrit is a language, right? The Sanskrit language was developed thousands of years ago purely on the combination of sounds. Before that was Tamil. But when the yogis, like Agastya, Maharishi and all these people, they began to take the essence of the Tamil language, meditated on these sounds, then a new language like this, a divine language presented itself. I'm not saying one is better than the other. They all have different purposes. The language that presented to the rishis were in form of sounds, patterns of sound, because they realized that combination of sounds can actually release energies in the brain, in the mind, and then finally actually it can really rearrange our physical reality. Right? So they would protect their ashrams. Again, it's only stories that I've read, all right, I have not seen it, but they used to protect their ashrams by mere sound vibrations, from wild animals and so on. And so, and from thieves and dacoits and so on. So there are brilliant stories like that to give us an insight into how much of reverence there was in a civilization thousands of years ago, reverence for sound. And so the entire Sanskrit language, with each of its alphabets, letters associated with different petals in the chakra and so on, all of that are linked to these sound vibrations. And therefore mantras like Namah Shivaya or Om Namo Narayanaya and all of these are powerful patterns of sound discovered by them and presented to us. Presented to us for our own fulfillment of life. We can use it for whatever we want. But how do we realize that? When we understand Matrika. So, when I hear people saying, all right, we finished this, I've got this chant under my belt, I'm going to learn this, I've learned this chant, I know 15 chants, I know 20 chants. Then my only question comes to my mind is, why so many? Why not just a few? Because if the essence is to dive deep and awaken the divine energy in these sounds, any one of them should be more than enough. Or a few is more than enough. But spending 40 years just learning one after the other and just jumping from one to the other constantly without giving any of them the chance to release their Matrika energy, then we will get nowhere. We'll be just going from pillar to post, post to pillar. So let us consider this and understand first of all the importance of sound, and then allow the universe to guide us, and we will take this in the future classes to come. This might have been a heavy class, but this forms the crux. So I would dare some of you to perhaps revisit it or revisit your notes if you have been taking notes, and think about it, contemplate on it, meditate on it, understand that sound comes from somewhere. And when sound reaches me, it has to go deep inside. And I can ignore it at a particular level, or I can absorb it. And breath has that peculiar energy. So think about that. And let us continue in this path of awareness and deep understanding towards enlightenment. I know it may not makes sense if you're watching this video after a long time, but we are coming to a long weekend here. I've got a trip to New York, so I won't be having a class on Monday, but we will carry on with this class, of course. Next Tuesday we'll carry on as usual. If you're watching it at a later date, you wouldn't have to worry. Just look for the next class, number 60, I guess, right? Okay. So for those of you in United States here, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, everyone, and we will catch you next time. As always, let's end this class with deep gratitude, 1 Om and 3 Shantis. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.